Well, the Sunday Times today is bringing together the voices of those experts who say that entrenched criminality, negligence and the like are at the heart of the water crisis. One of the experts they spoke to is Dr. Anthony Turton, who is a founder member of the South African Business Water Chamber and a former deputy governor of the World Water Council. He says control of water infrastructure has shifted to syndicates. Well, Dr. Turton joining us now. Thank you, as always. If we start in Hammanskraal, Doctor, the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant was the initial problem, putting sewage basically into waterways. Then the Human Rights Commission stepped in, said it was a crisis. That was years ago in 2019. Then we have all these water tankers being delivered, and the fundamental problem has not been fixed despite a tender to do that. Just let me get to the crux of what you're saying. Do you believe something like that, not addressing the fundamental problem in the first place, would have been deliberate, perhaps?
Yes, good evening to you and the listeners. These things are always inherently complex, and it's difficult to sort of draw a straight line through them, and that's why they don't get prosecuted at the end of the day. So I believe that facts are our friends, so let's stick to the facts of the matter. So the first fact that we know is that Rooiwal, as a very large sewage treatment works, has been in crisis since at least 2001. And when I say 2001, at that period of time, there was a start of an attempt to alter the procurement process within the Rooiwal sewage works to try and get certain tenders shifted in specific directions. I was appointed in 2015 to do a review over this particular matter with a view to getting a privately funded criminal prosecution taking place. Therefore, I had sight of all of the forensic paper trail that had already been developed by the legal team, and it was quite a robust thing. Really, I was actually quite blown away when I saw the extent to which this thing had been embedded. But subsequent to that, I've come to the knowledge of the same type of thing happening elsewhere, and we need go no further than the recent controversial situation with Andre de Ruyter and his explosive expose, if you like, about these nested hierarchies of syndicates within Eskom. And what we are seeing now is a similar type of situation in the water sector. And essentially what happens, if you had to sort of draw a common line through this, is that the sort of modus operandi is as follows. Number one, the process gets captured by a syndicate. What they then do is they manufacture a crisis. They artificially engineer a crisis of some sorts. The purpose of that crisis now is to try and bring about some emergency measure. With the emergency measure in place, they can now circumvent the normal procurement process, and they can then start rolling out these tenders. And typically these tenders would be for some other very, very important service. So let's take, for example, tankers. So tankers now, they have to be provided because something's happened in the system's failed. So now the tanker services come in, but there's no control kept over those tankers. And what we see, I live in the Ugu district municipality in KZN, and what we see happening there now, for example, is that these contracts are given out, and each tanker has to now go and fill up at a certain standpipe, which with proper water, SANS 241 water. They're supposed to fill themselves up, but you've got like 10 or 20 tankers in a row waiting to be serviced by one pipe. So the operators get frustrated, and instead of filling up with SANS 241 clean water, they go to the nearest river and they take water out of the river because they get paid per delivery that they make. They don't get paid for for waiting in the queue. So that's what happens. And now, can I just say this here?
Sure,
so
sure.
If this is the case in Hammanskraal, where a tanker has been involved, then in all probability what we're seeing there is the same kind of a story playing out.
Yeah, and residents are concerned about the tankers. We're still waiting for tests. But what you're getting to, and I'm sorry to cut in just for time, is that the middlemen are benefiting, the ones benefiting, and the people they're bribing. If you do the cost calculations, if this is fixed, if it had been fixed 10 years ago, is more ultimately being spent on the tenders than would have been spent to maintain and fix the water systems in the first place or not?
Well, without any question of doubt, that is so. That is an undisputed fact. We need about 1 trillion rand just to fix what is broken in the water sector. That's not to take it to a better level. That's just simply to fix it. And then, of course, how can we put a monetary value on human life? And that's why I think this Hammanskraal case is so important, because this is the first time that you've now got loss of human life. And and I say if, a big if that loss of life can be linked to a procurement process that has been captured, then for the first time we've potentially got a criminal prosecution that might play out, for the unintended consequence, the human life cost of corruption in South Africa.
What should happen now? Let's end with this. 1 trillion, I mean, that's a quarter of GDP. We don't have the money. How do you start fixing the problem that, if it's, as you suggest, is widespread and potentially fatal for many more South Africans?
Yes, in the Business Water Chamber, we've been working on that matter now. We've been engaging very closely with the Treasury, with the Presidency, with the Ministry, with various players across the water sector. And the idea here is to start rolling out some kind of solution that's a public-private partnership. You're going to have to get private capital to come into to recapitalize the sector. Now, there's a lot of concerns about this, etc., but there is certainly significant capital that's willing to go into that space. However, what capital would like is better control. They want to see, this whole thing of corruption being brought under control. They want tight governance. So there's a bit of a power struggle at the moment underway now. Those that are controlling the procurement process don't want the public-private partnerships to come in, because that's going to tighten up control. So there's a behind-the-scenes kind of power struggle going on there. This, I must also add, is not privatization of water. This is simply bringing private capital and technology into a very, very distressed system, simply in order to make South Africa a healthy place again, and a place that can start growing an economy and by attracting capital back into the system.
Yeah, we'll follow any breakthroughs. Thank you very much, Water Resource Management Specialist, Dr. Anthony Turton.